first slide, the first page of my lecture notes for the day, it talks about negative exponents. And it has the a to the negative n equals 1 over a to the n. What that's essentially saying is that if the exponent is negative, and you have it without any fraction, and it's on the top essentially, you're going to take the number and the exponent and put it to the bottom, and you're going to get rid of the negative sign. If the number with the exponent is on the bottom of a fraction, you're going to take the number, the base, or letter, whatever the base is, and you're going to take it to the top of the fraction bar along with the exponent, and again you're going to get rid of that negative sign. The negative sign on the exponent does not affect the negative sign on the base at all. The sign on the base will stay the same. The sign on the exponent will disappear when you move it from top to bottom or bottom to top. The second page has a summary of the rules that we learned for exponents. That is what you will have learned in your live web class on Thursday. And it is just a summing up of how to use them. The third page has a brief description of scientific notation. We'll come back to scientific notation after we deal with these, so I will be back to that third page. The fourth page is your examples that I want worked out. So everybody knows how to deal with 6 to the positive 2. That means that it's 6 times 6, which gives us 36. But because it's the negative, we are going to take this whole thing and we're going to flip it to the bottom of the fraction. So this is going to be something over 6 to the 2. I get rid of that negative sign when I flipped it to the bottom of the fraction. I have nothing up here. Well, what's the one thing that you can multiply by any number that does not change that number? 1. So I am allowed to put a 1 up on top. One over 8 raised to the negative 2. Because the parentheses are there, the exponent applies to both the top and the bottom of that fraction. So we can write this as 1 to the negative 2 over 8 to the negative 2. That's allowed if you want to. There are two ways of doing this. This is one way. So then after I do that, I can get rid of that fraction, or get rid of that negative by flipping the 1 to the 2 down to the bottom. Take the 8, get rid of that negative by flipping the 8 to the 2 up to the top. Simplifying this, 8 to the 2 is 64. 1 to the 2 is 1, which gives me 64 for my answer. So it's when you have the negative that you're flipping it to the other side of the fraction bar. The other way of dealing with that, as I said, there's two ways. Remove that. I can get rid of the negative right away, and I can flip everything inside of them, which then makes it 1 goes to the bottom, 8 goes to the top, parentheses, positive 2, which then equals 64 over 1, which is just 64. And whichever method you want to use, that's okay. both work. Down here, 7x to the negative 3. I'm going to use the second method that I showed here, and I'm going to move everything in the parentheses to the bottom of the fraction. So this is going to be open parentheses, 7x, close parentheses. It's going to be on the bottom of the fraction, and it's going to be raised to the third power. Again, I have nothing up on the top. I can stick a 1 in there. I can multiply by 1. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute the 3 into the 7 and the x. Now I have 1 over 7 to the third, x to the third, which gives me 1 over 7 to the third. I don't know what that is. Excuse me, squirrel. I grab my calculator. Hopefully it works. And I type 7 raised to 3 equals, and it tells me 343. There you go, squirrel. And then I have x to the third still. And there's my answer. Done. On a quiz or a test, if your paper gets a little bit messy, box off the answer so that I can see that's the answer that you mean as your answer. Over here, 4 to the negative 1 plus 4 to the negative 2. Order of operations. Your order of operations says parentheses first. No parentheses there. Next in the order of operations is exponents. So I have to deal with the exponents next. So I'm going to get rid of the 1. Get rid of the negative, I mean. So that gives me 1 over 4 to the 1. Plus, get rid of that negative, 1 over 4 squared. Next, I'm going to actually figure out what 4 to the 1 is and what 4 to the 2 is. So that is giving me 1 over 4. Anything raised to the first power is just itself. Plus 1 over 4 to the second power, 16. I'm not allowed to stop there. I have to keep going. I need to find a common denominator, or I need to use my ABC button on my calculator. I could use my ABC, but I'm going to do it by hand so you guys can see how to do it by hand. I want the common denominator. So 4 times 4 is 16, so I'm going to multiply 4 in on both the top and the bottom, which then gives me 4 over 16 plus 1 over 16, and I end up with 5 over 16. And that's my answer. Questions about this page? Email me, let me know. The next page, we're looking at questions 14, 20, 22, and 26. So 14 is 1 over q to the negative 5, 1 over q to the negative 5, Number 20 is x to the negative 4 over x to the negative 1. Number 22, 4 to the negative 2 minus 4 to the negative 3. And 26, 5 to the 0 plus negative 5 in parentheses to the 0. 5 to the 0 plus open parentheses, negative 5, close parentheses to the 0. So this one first. This is the easiest one of this bunch because there's only one real thing to do, and that's get rid of that negative sign. Anytime you do a math problem, you want to get rid of negatives in the exponents if you can, until you get to calculus, and then it doesn't matter as much. So that gives me q to the 5, and it would be over 1, but anything divided by 1 is itself. It doesn't change it. So I don't need that over 1 there. Over here, I'm going to use my rules for division with exponents. So look that up in the summary if you want to. That gives me x to the negative 4, my exponent on top of the fraction, minus, takes place of the divide by, exponent on the bottom of the fraction, negative 1. Notice we have the minus replacing the divide by, and we have the negative for the negative exponent. Double negative gives me a positive, so this gives me x to the negative 4 plus 1. Negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. Down here in this one, 4 to the negative 2. First thing I'm going to do, order of operations, no parentheses. I go to my exponents next. I'm going to take care of that negative on the exponent. So that gives me 1 over 4 to the 2. My minus sign, carry it down. 4 to the negative 3. Get rid of that exponent there. Takes the 4 to the bottom. Exponent is 3. Multiply that 1 in. What is 4 squared? That's 16. So I have 1 over 16 minus 1 over 4 to the third, 16, 32, 64. Subtract these two. I need a common denominator. 16 and 64. 64. So that means that I have to multiply this by 4. Which then gives me 4 over 64 minus 1 over 64. I have my common denominator. I'm allowed to subtract 4 minus 1, which gives me 3 over 64. Can I reduce that? No. 3 doesn't go into 64, so that one is finished. Last one here. See that 0 in the exponent? That 0 makes anything that it is applied to equal to 1. So I have 1 plus anything that is applied to. The exponent goes to what is immediately to the left of it, which is the parentheses. So it's saying the parentheses anything inside of those parentheses is 1. So I have 1 plus 1. Gives me 2. So why does anything raised to the 0 power equal 1? You know that 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And you know that 2 times 2 is 4. And 8 over 4 is 2. Going the other way with this, we could say 2 times 2 times 2 is 3. Sorry, there are 3 2's there. So my base is 2, exponent is 3, over 2 times 2, there are 2 of them there. My exponent is 2, my base is 2. And I do my 2 to the third, divide by 2 to the 2. Gives me 2 to the 3 minus 2, which gives me 2 to the 1, which is 2. So you guys kind of understand that, kind of at least. Now, what if instead, let me pause for a moment here. This thing is noisy. If instead of having only 2 2's on the bottom here, we had 3 2's on the bottom, I want to use a different color here. Now I have 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. Going the other way with this, I have 2 raised to the 1, 2, 3 over 2 raised to the 1, 2, 3. So then I use my rules for division with exponents. So I have 2 to the 3 from the top exponent minus the 3 from the bottom exponent equals 2 to the 0. So I have 2 to the 0 equals 1. And this will work with any number that you plug in there. The only possible non-answer there would be 0, and mathematicians are still arguing over what that is. But anything raised to the 0 power is 1, no matter whether it's a number or a letter or a function. Could be some complicated function inside parentheses, and then you have the 0 exponent outside the parentheses. Everything inside those parentheses is gone, and it equals 1. So don't get scared by some confusing equation if it has a 0 for the exponent. 5 to the 0, 1. Negative 5 inside parentheses, raised to the 0, 1. Takes us to the next page. We have 3 problems there. We have numbers 28, 32, and 38. 28 is y to the 4 times y to the 5 over y to the 6. So applying my rules for exponents, because these two are being multiplied, I am going to add the exponents. So this gives me y to the 4 plus 5 over y to the 6. 4 plus 5 is 9. So this gives me y to the 9 over y to the 6. Now I'm going to use my rule for dividing with exponents. So that gives me y to the 9. Division uses subtraction. So minus, exponent on the bottom is 6. 9 minus 6 is 3. And there is my answer. Next problem is 32. We have x squared raised to the 8th times x. X squared to the 8th times x all over x to the 9. So applying my rules here. I have something in parentheses raised to another power. So I'm going to multiply those two exponents. So I take those two and I multiply them. And that gives me x to the 16 times x all over x to the 9. Parentheses first, exponent second. I have no exponent written on that x, that second x there. That exponent is assumed to be 1. So now I have stuff being multiplied, so I'm going to add my exponents. So I have x to the 16 plus 1 over x to the 9. Not done yet. Gives me x to the 17 over x to the 9. Careful with your penmanship, you don't want that to look like x times 9. I have division, so I'm going to subtract the exponents. So I have x to the 17 minus 9. Do that subtraction, and I get 8. So my answer is x to the 8. And that one is finally done. Next problem. Y to the 4 to the 2 over y to the 12. Y to the 4 to the 2 over y to the 12. So the first thing I'm going to do is take care of the parentheses and the exponents. So I have to multiply those exponents. That gives me y to the 8 over y to the 12. Apply my rule for division with exponents. So that means that these two exponents are going to be subtracted, which gives me y to the 8 minus 12. 8 minus 12 is negative 4. And you might think that we're done there because we have one letter and a number, but we're not because we have that negative sign there. We have to get rid of the negative in the exponent. So that's where I take the fraction bar. The negative exponent is applying to the y, so the y goes to the bottom. The exponent is 4, get rid of that negative sign. Multiply the 1 in, and I have 1 over y to the 4 and I have my answer. If you have questions, email me. Don't let yourself be left in the dark. Watch in the next video for the next little bit of information, and I will be right back.